Angles whose terminal sides coincide are called coterminal angles. And I know this is something that we've talked about already this year. We're just going to practice a little bit more with them. So, for example, angles that are coterminal would be 180 degrees, which we know on the unit circle, we always reference 180 degrees. We land right here. So 180 degrees is also coterminal with, well, if we take 180 and we go all the way around one more time, so you're essentially taking 180 and adding 360, then you would also be at 540 degrees. So these would be coterminal angles. 0 radians and 2 pi radians are coterminal. Basically, if you can take an angle and either add or subtract 360 degrees if the angle's in degrees, or add or subtract 2 pi, you end up with coterminal angles. So find coterminal angles for the following angle measures. Do not change units, meaning if you start with an angle in degrees, your answer should be in degrees. If you start with something in radians, your answer should be in radians. So 140 degrees, we could add 360 degrees to get us something that's coterminal, and that would give us 500 degrees. Not that I asked you to, but you could also do another one by taking away 360 degrees from 140, and you could get negative 220 degrees. You could add 360 to 500, and you can get 860 degrees. That's also coterminal. So you can repeatedly add or subtract 2 pi or add or subtract 360 degrees to get coterminal angles. 0 radians, we already talked about how 2 pi would be an answer, or 4 pi, or negative 8 pi if you go the other direction. All of these you could understand that you would get by adding or subtracting 2 pi. 30 degrees, if we were to add 360, we could say that 390 degrees is coterminal to that. Or if you took 30 and subtracted 360, you could say negative 330 degrees would be coterminal. The toughest situation is when you're taking something in radians that's a fraction and you have to add or subtract 2 pi. So remember, adding any fractions, you want to have denominators be equal. So if I'm talking about having a denominator of 6, when I'm adding 2 pi, I prefer to think of this as something over 6. So 2 pi is equivalent to 12 pi over 6. So if I'm doing pi over 6 and I want to add or subtract 2 pi, it's like adding or subtracting 12 pi over 6. So pi over 6 plus 12 pi over 6, we would know that 13 pi over 6 could be an answer. Or if I did pi over 6 minus 12 pi over 6, that would be a negative 11 pi over 6, and that would be another coterminal angle. Sometimes you might be asked to give a very specific coterminal angle, meaning that it has to be within a certain interval. So find coterminal angles that are on the given interval, do not change units. So what this is saying is I want something that's coterminal to 50 degrees, but my answer needs to be between 360 and 720. Parentheses with 360 means it can't equal 360, but it could equal 720 since this is a bracket. So clearly, to get from 50 to something coterminal between these two numbers, I would have to add 360. So 50 plus 360, we would get up to 410 degrees, which is in that interval, so that would be our final answer. 11 pi over 6, but I want an answer between negative 2 pi and 0, which means I would have to take 11 pi over 6, and I'm going to need to subtract 2 pi as many times as necessary. So again, this would be like subtracting 12 pi over 6, so we would get negative 1 pi over 6, and that falls in that interval. Negative pi over 4, and we want that to be between 4 pi and 6 pi. So we would be taking negative pi over 4, and clearly since this is negative and I want answers much larger, I need to add 2 pi. But again, 2 pi, I want to rewrite this as something over 4 since I'm working with that fraction. So I'll think of it as 8 pi over 4. So I'm going to add 8 pi over 4, so I get 7 pi over 4. So now the question is this between 4 pi and 6 pi? Well, why not rewrite both of these as something over 4 so it's easier to compare? So 4 pi is going to be, well, if I multiply 4 times 4, that's going to be 16 pi over 4. And then over here, this is going to be 24 pi over 4. So 7 pi over 4 is not between those. So I need to add 8 pi over 4 again to get 15 pi over 4. Still not between 16 pi and 24 pi over 4. So if I add 8 pi over 4 one more time, 15 plus 8, that's going to be 23 pi over 4, which is in that interval. So this would be the answer that we're looking for.